Okay, so in this video, I'm going to explain the solutions to the problem the problems I gave in number 2 of assessment 1 on topic 3. So if you look at your test paper, so in number 2 type 2, I asked you to factorize expressions completely. So factorize expressions completely. And the first that I gave you, that's letter A, is 4m cubed x squared minus 10m squared x minus 6m cubed and then x. Now the key in factoring in expression is the first thing that you have to check is that if there is a common factor among the terms, and as we can see, we have numbers 4, 10, and 6. The common factor of 4, 10, and 6 is 2. For m cubed, m squared, and m cubed, they all have m, so you can factor out a certain number of m's, maybe m squared or m cubed. We'll do that later. And then we could also see that each term has an x. Okay, so let's start factoring. So for the numbers, we said we can factor 2. Okay, for the m, you pick the one with the smallest exponent. Okay, so that's m squared. You cannot have m cubed because that's more than m squared. So you have to pick the one with the lowest exponent. Now for the x, the lowest x is the one with the x to the 1. So this is just x. Okay, so once you factor out the common factor, you perform division, okay, to obtain the remaining expression. Okay, so working with the first, so 4m cubed x squared, if I factor out 2m squared x, that will give me 2 because that's 4 divided by 2. And then m cubed and m squared, that will give me one more m, okay, because you factored out m squared. So from m cubed, you still have 1m left. Then from x squared, factor out x, you still have a single x. For 10m squared x, so minus, so 10 divided by 2 is 5. M squared and x will be cancelled, or there's no more m squared and x because we are factoring out m squared x. Then finally, for 6m cubed x, that's 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then m cubed by m squared is m. X by x is just 1, so there's no more x. So the factored form of the given expression is 2m squared x times 2mx minus 5 minus 3m. Okay, sometimes there will be cases in which after you perform the factoring by the greatest common factor, you could still somehow factor the remaining term. But in this particular case, there is no way that you could factor 2mx minus 5 minus 3m anymore. So we can leave the final answer in this form. Okay, in 2b, the given was negative 3b squared plus 76b minus 25. Okay, so unlike the number 2a, we can't see any common factors for 3, 76, and 25. And b is not a common factor because the last term is a constant, and that's 25. There's no b for the 25. So that will not work. So factoring by greatest common factor will not be our option. Now, if you look at the expression, it's a trinomial, and for a trinomial, this is the most common expression that will be asked to you to factor. And usually the trinomial will be factored into 2 binomial. That's always almost a case. But before you do that, because this is a type 2 question, there are some initial steps that you have to perform. And like in type 1, it's very straightforward. You factor it, you factor the expression, then you have the binomial factors immediately. Okay, so for this one, we need to transform negative 3b squared plus 76b minus 25 in such a way that our first term will be a positive. So, but to do that, what we can do is to start factoring out the negative sign, or the negative 1, and the negative 3b squared will become 3b squared. The positive 76 or plus 76 will become minus 76b, and the 25 will become plus 25. Okay, so after doing that, so you can now focus on factoring 3b squared minus 76b plus 25. So we'll copy the negative sign, and we'll now break down the trinomial into two factors. So this is where you have to be good in selecting combinations of numbers. Okay, but make sure you know how to get the numbers on the first terms and the numbers or the expressions on the second term. Okay, this is the idea. The first terms are always coming from the first term of the trinomial. So think of the factors of 3b squared. To get a 3b squared, I have to have a 3b and I have to have a b. Okay, and I think there is no more or no other combinations that will give us 3b squared aside from 3b times b. And then after working on the 3b squared, so we look for the last terms of the binomials, and those numbers will come from the factors of 25, or the numbers that when you multiply them will give you 25. So what we can do here is pick a combination of numbers. The first one that I can think of is 5 and 5. Okay, and then now 25 can be obtained either from 5 times 5 or from negative 5 times negative 5. So you have to select which of the combinations should be the more appropriate. Okay, but so how do we do that? If the middle term is a subtraction, or it's a negative value, so that means I have to pick this combination because this is the one that will give me a negative value. This will always be positive. Okay, so that means I have to make my 5 minus 5 and the second 5 to also be minus 5. And then it's not yet done, because you have to check whether that is really the factored form, because sometimes even if you break down the numbers properly, the combination of the terms that they will produce will not sum up to negative 76b, the middle term. Okay, so negative, if we check, this is negative 5b and this is negative 15, and I think negative 5 and negative 15 is like too small that if you add them, it will not give you a 76. Okay, so it seems like the negative 5 or the minus 5 and the minus 5 will not work. So we have to think of other numbers, two numbers. When you multiply them, it will give you 25. So 25 can be 1 times 25, or it can be negative 1 times negative 25. Now similarly, we're going to try the combinations with the negative sign. So going back to our incomplete factored form, that's 3b and b. So since it is a 76, it will be reasonable for us to put 25 on the b rather than put the 25 in this place. Okay? Because I am already anticipating that if I multiply 3 and 25, that will give me 75. And that's very close to the number that I want, which is 76. And once I complete the numbers and it's 1, I could clearly see that this 2, the outer, gives me the 75b and the inner gives me the 1b or the b. And that's exactly what I need, because I need a 76. A b and a 75b together will be 76. Okay, so putting the correct signs for these numbers is minus 1 and minus 25. then we were able to obtain the factored form, which is 3b minus 1 and then b minus 25. Okay, so you could check your work by multiplying the expression and obtaining the given expression. Okay, so that's the factored form of the trinomial inside the parenthesis. But since we started with, if you look at the given, there's a negative sign outside, so you still have to carry that negative sign until the end of your solution. So that's negative 3b minus 1 times b minus 25. Now just in case your answer doesn't have any minus sign, maybe it is in the form 1 minus 3b times b minus 25. That is if you distribute the negative sign to 3b and minus 1. Okay, but both of this, so this is correct and this is also correct. Okay, so I'll stop there for this video, and then I'll explain number 2c, and maybe I can cover until 2d and 2e maybe. Okay, so that's for this video. So just refer to the next video that I will be or that I have created. Okay.